Question number 4 is wrong about intestine. Peyer's patches are largest and most numerous in the ileum. Brunner's glands lie in the submucosa of the duodenum. Vasa recta are longer in ileum. Orbach's plexus lies between circular and longitudinal muscle coats, which is a wrong statement. This question is actually about the microanatomy of the small intestine. So for that, you need to draw a image, cut section. What I'm trying to draw here is for you. Let's say this is a loop of intestine, longitudinal section of a loop of intestine. Here is the transverse rigid fixed mucosal folds. These transverse mucosal folds will diminish in size and density as we move from proximal to distal, and these transverse mucosal folds of the intestine, they are called plica circularis, also called as walls of Kerckering. So in the question, what was being asked was about the lymphoid aggregates. So throughout the length of the small intestine, you will find is these slightly lymphoid patches, lymph nodules. These are spread throughout. So let's name these as solitary lymphoid follicles. But at certain places, especially let me tell you that towards the distal portion of the small intestine, there will be large oval shaped patches, and the longitudinal axis of these patches will be along the length of the small intestine, right? And these patches will diminish when we are talking about the proximal portion of the small intestine. So these large patches, which are actually aggregates or aggregated lymphoid follicles, which are actually called Peyer's patches. They are more predominantly or more densely found in the ileum. These are the features of ileum, except the duodenum, which is a fixed portion of the small intestine, but jejunum and ileum, right? The jejunum and ileum, they are covered by this mesentery like this. This is a mesentery which encloses this length of the small intestine like this. This is the mesentery through which this loop of intestine is suspended. And in its root, there will be this superior mesenteric artery, superior mesenteric vein. So from this superior mesenteric artery, which is running along its base like this is superior mesenteric artery running in its base of the mesentery. It will send out small little branches here, around 15 to 20 on the left side, because the mesentery is suspended from this root of mesentery towards the left, and from these there will be branches, and then these branches will anastomose and will form arcades like this. So these arcades, you will find that they are more predominantly found here in the distal portion of the intestine. These are meshwork of the blood capillaries. The arteries actually ramify, they divide and redivide, and they form this arcade like this within the mesentery. Now what happens is, from these arcades towards the mesenteric border of the small intestine, there will be now vertically or straight vessels reaching up to the small intestine alternately on the two sides like this. One will reach from the opposite side to reach towards this, this border is called the anti-mesenteric border, and this border is called the mesenteric border. So from this mesenteric border, alternately, the straight vessels, they reach, in the submucosa. They will, of course, first of all, they will perforate those outer layer, the muscular layer, and then will reach into the submucosa. And within the submucosa, they will run transversely and will reach towards the anti-mesenteric border. So these straight running vessels, they are called vasa recta. Small vessels providing blood to this loops of intestine, these vessels are called vasa recta. Now, as you have seen, let's say this is the proximal portion of the intestine, and this is the distal portion of the intestine. So what you're seeing here, that the arcades are only 1 to 2 in layers, 1 or 2 level of arcades, but here the arcades are 3 to 4 level of arcades, means you have more of arcade formation in the distal portion of the small intestine. Now from those arcades, there were the straight vessels reaching to the small intestine, and those were called vasa recta. So vasa recta, in this proximal portion of the small intestine, you are seeing these are long, and in the distal portion, these are short. I'm talking about transverse section. In the proximal portion of the small intestine, you will find that the villi, which are projecting out from the luminal surface of the mucosa, they are long and densely placed. But as you move towards the distal portion of the small intestine, you will find that the villi will be shorter in length, and the density also keeps on decreasing. And what is invaginating inside are the crypts of Lieberkühn. So these are villi, intestinal villi, and these are the crypts of Lieberkühn. Then this much will be the lamina propria. Then there will be submucosa, and below the submucosa you will find is the muscular layer. Inner will be the circular muscle layer, outer muscular coat is the longitudinal muscular layer. And because it's a peritoneal covered organ, so outermost surface will be made up of serosa. Serosa means it is a cellular covering which is made up of mesothelial cells. Simple squamous epithelium surrounds this small intestine, and that is called serosa. Circular muscle layer, and this one is longitudinal muscular layer. In between the two layers, between the circular and longitudinal muscle layer, you will find is nerve plexus. This is a part of enteric nervous system, and this nerve plexus is called orbex plexus or mesentery. There's a plexus here also in the submucosa called mesentery plexus. Remember these neurons, the autonomic neurons, sympathetic and parasympathetic fibers, when they reach to innervate the muscles of the gut, because autonomic fibers, they innervate the smooth muscles. So there will be international neurons, and there will be special neurotransmitters like VIP, vasoactive intestinal peptides. You will have special cells there, and those are called interstitial cells of Kajal. So they also participate in this, and that's how this coordination between the circular and longitudinal muscle layers that take place. Yeah, one more thing which was in question was about this Brunner's glands. These are the glands opening here in these crypts, and these Brunner's glands are actually placed here in the submucosa. This is an example of actually compound tubuloacinar glands. So in cut section you will find them here like this in the submucosa. But remember that these Brunner's glands is a feature of duodenum. Once again, back to the same question, wrong about the intestine. Peyer's patches are largest and most numerous in the ileum. You have seen this. Brunner's glands line the submucosa of the duodenum. I had shown you there. Vasa recta are longer in ileum. Orbex plexus lies between circular and longitudinal muscle cords. And this one is vasa recta, they are longer and more densely placed in the jejunum, and they're smaller in the ileum.